Introduction, and thank you all for your kindness. I'd like to start by reading a poem from my latest book, Black Food, and it's by Gail Myers, PhD, who is a cultural anthropologist, a farmer, an activist, and a poet. It's entitled Rice. 3,000 years ago. Is it me? Am I just that magnetic?
You are supercharged.
I do. No, I gave it to my daughter. Can you hear me well? Right. Yeah. 3,000 years ago, my people grew rice along the Niger River. Black hands sowed the seeds in water, planted patties of trials and error. In water, solid seeds grew sufficient lines, scattered inside a chafe interior. Eventually, behold the gold, rice. Tall golden stalks threshed and winnowed, stubble trails ready for mounds of fluffy bouquets of fragrant rice. Once cooked, rice filled bellies and souls, satisfied tongues singing to the wind, full hands talking to beating drums, offering to spirit what is theirs, offering to everyone what they can eat and what they can keep. These were my people, the rice people first. The rice people, brutally captured and traded for rice to grow empires as growing culinary commodities. To build their empire, set their foundations, nails into their walls. But we lay the rows, planted the rice, hands unwilling but forced through migration. People who labored but never ate the fruits, be it indigo, tobacco, sugar, cotton, rice building framed the empires, but their hands could never see. Their bent bodies, tall, short, planted, pulled, plucked, harvested, winnowed, the dragging, fluffed, wafted, the shackled rice that drained into the sea with 6 million quieted hearts. Along the sinuous transatlantic pathways, grains of rice beneath the sea, 6 million flickering lights, 6 million faces fading into mirages. We eat from a pot of warm rice. We know to remember, to never forget the lines beneath the sea. 6 million souls sacrificed. The sea paid the price. The coastal Carolina sea people grew rice with no taste of liberation, no time to sleep, but this was the dish from which we grew strong, knowing uninterrupted 3,000 years of rice, knowing the toil of the rice. Wind knowing, rice knowing, because we knew rice. We knew wind, the many voices of wind, because we knew rice, we knew the beauty of water. Understood water's intonations, like the curves of waves and the pulse of currents. We knew the hums from their four directions. They said, "You are also water. You are also wind." They knew this was true. We are truth. The rice people knew truth. They knew wind. They felt deeply the swelling clouds falling like rain. Rain for rice. Clouds sacrificed for rice. Rain overflowed, covered fields and paddies, yet the leaves remained dry on the trees. There was no water for the roots. We thirst for juices that liberate souls. We hunger for a dish that tastes like rain. When it rains, I think of rice, people in my family. Growing up in my family, we ate rice every day. My mom says my dad wanted rice every day. My mom also said his mom probably ate rice every day, and her mom too. My father was a South Carolina low country Geechee, which makes me a Geechee. In my house growing up, we ate rice every day. This is our dish. In spite of how our dish was made, we have not shame to feel. We make this dish in joy from trials and tribulations from all those years, feeling the mirages of 6 million lights, hearing the wafting of wind songs, singing the knowing, songs that keep us free in spite of the talk of liberation. The empires' tongues talk of liberation, but we never taste the scent of rice or the wet of rain. The rice people first. They knew the water and the rain and fished every day along coastal shores. In my house, we ate rice every day. We also fished, and I learned nearly every I learned nearly early how to fish along the water's edge on a backwater creek with snakes crawling, minding their own business, with my wooden reed fishing pole with my aunties and uncles. We fished and ate rice as a testimony to our knowing. It was a dish we made, knowing rice and rain. Rice tasting like survival, fish comforting like water. We bleed our ancestors' blood. We give to spirit what is theirs. We keep what we can eat and know what to leave in the fields. We are rice people first. We see beauty in the wind. We taste truth in the rain. For this dish we made to remember the 6 million souls beneath the sea. We are rice. Everything is connected. You can move that this way. Okay. So, check two, check two, check two. Check 2, 3. Check 2, 3. Check 2, 3. That seems like it's good. Okay.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, guys.
So first of all, I want to thank Paul Goldberg for reaching out to my team about joining you this evening. And I want to thank Dari Gonzorn and her staff, as well as the Homeless Garden Project's Board of Directors for bringing us together. I think I can speak for all when I say that we sit in deep gratitude for this joyous celebration of the important work that HGP has been doing for over 3 decades. I also want to thank the close to 80 volunteers and everyone who worked behind the scenes, growing, harvesting, prepping, cooking, serving, and working to ensure that we had a gracious and delicious dinner. I know this was mentioned early, but I would be remiss if I did not highlight the fact that tonight's menu was executed by all women chefs. This is notable for a number of reasons. While historically kitchens have primarily been framed as a woman's place, professional kitchens have been and continue to be male-dominated spaces. Because of this, the food service industry has long been criticized for its lack of gender inclusivity and equity. While more efforts have been made over the past several years to address these issues, the reality is that women continue to be paid lower wages. They often don't get the same type of support and mentorship that their male counterparts receive. They face aggressive sexist behavior, misconduct, and abuse from their coworkers and employers. And as Chef Amanda Cohen reminds us, quote, women get nominated for fewer awards than men, they get covered less by the press, and they get fewer opportunities to lead high-end kitchens, or frankly, any kitchens at all, end quote. So I don't think that we should take it for granted that we have a meal prepared by brilliant, accomplished women chefs who are committed to excelling in their craft, running successful businesses, and mentoring a new generation of women in the food industry. So thank you, Gemma Cruz, Isabel Nunez-Jackson, Anna Bortolini, and Yolanda Santos. Can we give them So I have a few brief thoughts to share about sustainable food systems, food justice, and the essential work of the Homeless Garden Project. But first, I want to honor our meal. I could go on for hours about the ingredients, techniques, and glorious multitude of flavors of this ingredient-driven menu that we shared. Instead, I want to go in a different direction by reminding us of our interconnection and leaning on a quote by the late Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh from his book Savor, Mindful Eating, Mindful Life. Quote, when practiced to its fullest, mindful eating turns a simple meal into a spiritual experience, giving us a deep appreciation of all that went into the meal's creation, as well as deep understanding of the relationship between the food on our table, our own health, and our planet's health, end quote. As a chef, I want us all to be present with the various flavors, smells, temperatures, and textures of our meal. As someone who practices mindfulness, I would encourage us all to also be conscious of the soil and its living organisms, the air, the sunshine, the water, and all that goes into making our food. Everything is connected. In fact, if you don't mind, I'd like to share the 5 food contemplations by Thich Nhat Hanh as a tool to help us remember this interconnection. Our food is a gift from the whole universe, the earth, the sky, numerous living beings, and much hard work. May we eat with mindfulness and gratitude so as to be worthy to receive it. May we recognize and transform our unwholesome mental formations, especially our greed, and learn to eat with moderation. May we keep our compassion alive by eating in such a way that we reduce the suffering of living beings and preserve our planet. We accept this food so that we may nurture our sisterhood and brotherhood, strengthen our community, and nourish our ideal of serving living beings. It comes as no surprise that local farms provided all the raw ingredients for our meal tonight. In fact, ingredients from this farm are incorporated into every single course. Growing food for community and locally and sustainably has been core to the Homeless Garden Project's identity since its founding. HGP was the first, and I encourage you to check out the website if you haven't, look in the brochure, and learn more about this work. But HGP was the first CSA in Santa Cruz County and one of the earliest adopters nationwide. They, yes, they donate shares of the CSA to local organizations to distribute to their clients. And in 2022, they have grown the program by 50%, now reaching 15 organizations. Part of the brilliance of HEP's work is the centrality of sustainability. The food we eat and how we produce it have major impacts on our health and environmental sustainability. Food production is responsible for up to 30% of greenhouse gas emissions and 70% of freshwater use. Land conversion for agriculture is the single most important driver of biodiversity loss. I mean, you were in Santa Cruz. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I got to share these facts with you anyway. I know you guys all know this already. You know, I have to say, I was so excited that our meal was plant-centered, not just for selfish reasons, though. Food sourced from animals, especially red meat, have high environmental footprints compared to other food groups. This has an impact on greenhouse gas emissions and land use. Industrial farming, CAFOs, and monoculture commodity crops make things worse. The use of chemical inputs, fertilizers, and pesticides may equal larger yields in the short term, but they're extractive and unsustainable in the long term. Plus, their runoff pollutes the soil, air, and water. Regenerative agriculture, grazing, and crop rotation are sustainable practices. They lead to healthy soils and streams, healthy nutrient-dense food, and a healthy planet. Quite simply, a diet that includes more plant-based and fewer animal-sourced foods is sustainable and good for both people and our planet. It's not a question of all or nothing, but rather small changes for large and a positive impact, and HGP gets this. Food can be a driver for change and is at the center of HGP's work. And this in turn brings us to justice. What has always impressed me about HGP's programming is the understanding that everything is connected. We cannot separate sustainable food system from food justice or from housing justice. Sustainability and sustenance and housing security must be braided together with equity. When I think about the work of HGP, I'm reminded of the Freedom Farm founded in Mississippi in the 1960s by Fannie Lou Hamer, with 600 acres of affordable housing, community gardens, commercial kitchens, and fields upon food crops. We know that housing insecurity is simply one indicator of material deprivation. Most people who are homeless or housing insecure also face food insecurity, very little, if any, access to medical service, and the list goes on and on. Housing justice, as HGP knows, is about addressing the multiple issues to which it is connected. When the organization was founded in 1990, the initial goal was to create refuge where individuals experiencing homelessness had a safe community space to go, where they could find healthy food and put their hands in the soil and increase their well-being. Everything is connected. Structural systems of oppression have shaped the conditions of working class and working poor communities and help explain our broken housing system, as well as our inequitable food and health outcomes. We know at the core of all these issues is our current economic system. Working class, working poor, and increasingly so-called middle class people are having a harder time affording housing, and many people are ending up homeless due to the inequities caused by capitalism. This must change, and it is up to us to freedom dream and work towards new realities that allow people to live with dignity and have their basic human rights met.
Yay!
The Homeless Garden Project knows that housing is a human right, not a commodity to be bought and sold for profit. Their work is essential, and it calls for a more just housing system. While looking towards the bigger picture, HEP is embracing our multitude, and they are sharing the stories of and helping repair the harm to the most impacted by our inequitable world. Grassroots-based building in the most impacted communities, pushing for public policy changes that are in the best interests of everyday people like you and me, and building systems outside of the ones that currently don't serve us are all vital steps to transforming our broken systems. But I don't want us to lose sight of the seemingly apolitical everyday acts of resistance. While some might see providing job training, transitional employment, and support services to people experiencing homelessness as apolitical, I would argue that they are highly political and, dare I say, radical. Until one's basic needs are met, it's hard to fight the powers that be. HDP's program is now home to be an effective year-long program where graduates obtain stable housing and stable employment within 3 months of leaving the program at more than 90%. Trainees are paid for their work. They receive job training and support services while in the program. Everything is connected, and we should all be aware of the reality that until everyone is healed and whole, none of us are truly healed and whole. When we can see ourselves in every other living being, we can't help but feel charged to get up off our butts and do something to create a more healthful, just, and sustainable world. Thank you again, HEP, for bringing us all together tonight. While gathering around the table isn't the solution to changing the world, community building events such as this in support of life-changing programming can be a powerful catalyst and a great start. I hope you all will consider joining me in sharing your time, talents, and treasure in support of the important work of the Homeless Garden Project. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Heidi.
Thank you, Bryant. That was so brilliant and illuminating, and thank you for bringing us into spirit, too. My name is Derry Ganshorn, and I'm the Executive Director of the Homeless Garden Project, and I'm here tonight to give you just a little background on some of our goals. You would have me here longer, except that I put a lot of it in the program tonight, so you get a chance to read that. And then I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is a trainee in the program, Janel Garibaldi. So one of our goals at HDP is to create a sense of belonging. Belonging to ourselves, to each other, and to the land. And we work to create belonging for our trainees, but also for anyone who comes to the farm. And I hope that all of you tonight may have experienced a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself this evening, whether it's to community, or our mission, or our farm, and how it connects to the local food system. One way we cultivate belonging is at our weekly circle meeting, attended at the beginning of the week by trainees and staff. Our training supervisor asks a question, and we go around the circle, each person answering the question. It's a time of listening and of being heard on a wide variety of topics, from, for example, foods that remind you of happiness, to another example, what's a goal that you've achieved that you're proud of? During circle meeting, our next speaker, Janel Garibaldi, always responds with great passion and magnetism. In her passion, she seems to me fearless and unstoppable. That's why I thought she might like to speak to all of you tonight about her experience in our training program. She worked hard to sort through how to talk about her past and to describe her experience, and we had the opportunity to get to know her more. The talk she's going to give tonight was truly a labor of love. I want to try to recreate a moment I had with Janel last week in the midst of preparing for her talk. Janel had been talking with our program manager, Evan Jones, who is here tonight, and I'd like to honor him tonight. Evan, could you please stand? He's here celebrating his birthday. So Evan was listening to Janel as she described a conflict she had had on the farm. He was drawing her out. I have seen him do this 100 times with incredible presence and patience. And she worked through the conflict. In my office afterwards, she was so relieved. And she said, he helped me so much. I love him. I could have kissed him. He's so beautiful. And I tell you this to highlight the importance of love and fearlessness in healing and in building community, and to celebrate Janel and her unabashed love. Please welcome her now.
And thank you, Evan. And that's all truth. And here's some more. When I was preparing for this talk, it was important for me that all of you here as guests at our sustained supper would get my very best. I wanted to speak in a way that you could see my excitement about my experience here, but also see how important the program is to our community. This program excites me. I'm passionate about the empowerment the program has brought me, and I want you to know how life-changing the program is for both me and others. I was brought up in Boulder Creek, where I attended Boulder Creek Elementary School. My story goes way back. When my Yaya and Papu bought a cottage in Boulder Creek. Yaya and Papu, for those of you that don't know, are grandparents. Yaya and Papu are my mother's parents and are very dear to me, and important figures in my life. They owned a bakery called Apollo Baklava that specialized in baklava and other Greek pastries. My grandfather ran the bakery while my yaya worked for Blue Shield in San Francisco. They delivered baklava from San Francisco to Carmel. So every other weekend, we would drive up to Boulder Creek right after Yaya got off work, spend the night, get up super early, deliver baklava through Santa Cruz Mountains, up to UCSC, and on into Carmel. Our day usually ended at our last delivery in Carmel, then we would return to Boulder Creek. As a child, I spent every weekend with my Yaya and Papu. My grandparents gave me a wonderful childhood and shaped who I am. One day, my grandparents decided to sell their business and move to New Mexico. I was devastated by their move and begged my mom to let me move to New Mexico, till one day she finally said yes. So off I went to New Mexico. After graduating from high school, I moved back to California and began to work. I became a single mother of a beautiful son, and after 12 years of an unhealthy relationship, I decided to move on, and on we went. My son and I moved to Redwood City. During that time, I worked for Oracle, Franklin Templeton, Westburn Supply, and a few other startup companies. After watching my son ride his bike from speed bump to speed bump in our apartment complex, I realized I don't want my son to be able to ride. I want him to ride in the dirt, not speed bump to speed bump. And I wanted for him is to not run into. Wait a minute, let me try that again. And have a place for him to run free, not run into traffic, which wasn't possible in the urban environment of Redwood City. So we headed to Boulder Creek. During the time that we lived in the Santa Cruz Mountains, my son attended and graduated from Harbor High School. Later that year, he introduced me to his girlfriend. Everything changed. I didn't see much of my son. They were always out and about. And all of a sudden, I realized that I wasn't needed. I felt a bit lost. I realized that I had never really planned for the day that my son was going to venture off and just leave me. During this time, I jumped in and out of a couple of relationships that were again unhealthy, until one day I got a call from my aunts asking me if I would meet them for lunch. So I said sure. They asked if I'd be willing to move in with my 93-year-old grandmother, Noni. That would be my father's mother. And I agreed. I took care of Noni in her home in Daly City for over 6 years. She was a hard woman, strict, a bit critical. I loved her dearly, and we grew very close over the years. I hated to leave her alone on Fridays, because sometimes she'd sit that evening till someone came, and it would sometimes be kind of late. She'd be all alone. She often expressed, oh, I wish her kids were here to come visit her. So it made me always feel kind of bad. On January 10th of 2021, Noni passed away. Within one day, her house was full of family. Of course, I was livid. I was mourning the death of my grandmother, my best friend. And the next thing you know, my dad and I had a nasty argument. The next thing you know, I got in my car and I left. I chose at that time to be homeless. I made the decision in my grief because I was not going to live in a place where there would be arguing and fighting, which you know happens, and as a result turn into a toxic environment. So on I went. I left that night and was gone. I was now homeless, living in my car. I asked a good friend if I could stay in a Suburban because it was much easier to sleep in that than in my car. So he couldn't have me over because it was during quarantine and he was in the shelter. But his room happened to have an extra suite in it. The next thing you know, to my surprise, they moved me into the suite and I became a part of Housing Matters program. My alienation from my family deepened because they didn't share information with me, such as the wake or the memorial service. Come to find out, after calling the Italian cemetery, the service was the following day. So I showed up to see the whole family at the service, and I chose to stay across in the distance. The service was over. I stayed away from my family, fear of confrontation. I had nothing good for me. I had nothing good to say. Then I left. During the summer of 2021, I was working with Housing Matters and was so blessed to hear that they'd be helping me with housing. By October 21st, I was happy in my new place. I knew it was time for me to now get a job. After several failed attempts to write a current resume, I sunk lower and lower. I had lost my confidence and suddenly was experiencing memory loss. Like the dates and the times to put on my resume, I was just baffled. Feeling low and unsure, I told my Housing Matters caseworker, Gustavo, about my need to gain control of my life. And he asked, what do you want to do, Janel? And I turned to him and I said, I'm going to stick my hands in some dirt and heal. That was when I first heard of the Homeless Garden Project and that you could work on a farm. I was so excited. It was 1:15 that afternoon on a Friday. I was ready to jump in my car when Gustavo said to me, the day ends at 2. What are you doing? I said, I can make it. I can make it. Since it was Friday, I was not waiting until Monday. So I took a chance and flew to Santa Cruz. I was on my way once again, on my way to joining the Homeless Garden Project Transitional Employment Program. I started in December of 2021. I have gained many new habits and tools to help me be the best that I can as a result of my time here at the project. I'm very grateful for being accepted into a community of love, respect, and support that anyone who comes to the farm or workshop is sure to enjoy at any time. At this program, it doesn't matter what you wear, how you look, and you're not judged, and everyone's welcomed. I believe the tools will help me improve as I move forward on my journey to be the best mother, friend, and colleague I can be. I have learned to be accountable and be there for those who may need. I am now punctual and take pride in respecting everyone's time. It also helped me to repair relationships with my family. We have resolved our issues, and I love them very much, and we've worked through this. This was added to it, sorry. I was last Friday when I went and met my family yesterday, so it's a little late in my speech, sorry. Anyways, it's all true. When I think of these tools, some of them seem to be a way of stepping outside of my own experience and putting myself in someone else's. To imagine how they might be feeling or what they might be going through. The key is responding with empathy to my colleagues and in building a strong team. Setting goals is an important part of the Homeless Garden Project. We started off with some small ones. I thought to myself, goals? Small goal? She says, well, what? Just come up with one. The first one was putting my keys in the same place. Because that morning, I was freaking out because I couldn't find my keys. There's no way I was going to be late to work. Well, I found a spot for my keys, so I started to put my keys on the hook each time I entered my house. It's funny. I remembered my father at my first apartment saying, now look, Janel, when you walk in the door, you get a hook here and you put your keys right on it. He says, you'll always have your keys. Dad, if you could see me now. It's only taken me a few decades to get that one. And so I continued to place my keys on the hook day after day. The next thing you know, I created a habit. And a good one at that. Feeling good about achieving a small goal empowered me to set more goals and feel even better about myself. It empowered me and began building my confidence that I'd lost somewhere. I never realized how such a small goal could change how a person feels, acts, and thinks. I also have been working on communication. And if you know me, I would say I was a great communicator because talking, I could do. My definition was speaking. Communication is speaking, right? I had no problem doing that. A challenging incident with some of the team on my farm made me take a hard look at communication skills, at my communication skills, and how I talk to people. I found that I wasn't always good at communicating. I came to learn that communication is huge and it has many facets like presentation, words, listening, hearing, responding, actions and reactions, and more. Wow. Learning all the different facets of communication as a whole was mind-blowing. The incident allowed me to see the depth of communication and what it entails. As I consider my goals for the future, I know I want to be a better person in my daily life. I know it doesn't matter who you are, where you are, or what you have in life. But what I most care about is being open to change and accepting others as they are. All of the beauty in me came from my Aya Papu and my grandma and my noni. But HGP has given me an opportunity to regain my confidence. I'm a grown person that needed healing, and I got that. I have connected the dots and gained so much understanding of simple things. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't learn something new. I am truly blessed to be a part of this wonderful project, and I want to thank all of you for your support. Let me try that again. I want to thank you all for your support that has allowed this program to help those willing to help themselves. Thank you.
Wow, it's so hard to follow Janel. She's so wonderful, and she is so wonderful. So my name's Paul. I'm the Director of Development here for the Homeless Garden Project. And in preparation for this event, I've gotten to come out here to the farm more than I have of late. With the pandemic and having young kids, I've been working remotely, and I'm so reminded by what a thriving and inclusive community this is here at the farm. And I was here, and I was getting Janel and I were just chatting, talking about talking here now, and Janel just is our vision statement is we envision a thriving and inclusive community, workforce, and food system. And if anyone embodies thriving and inclusive, it's Janel. So we're talking, and this dear couple comes, and they're wandering around a bit, and the farm stand's closed, and they're kind of poking around. I could tell they want to talk, and so we engage, and it turns out they're from out of town, and they have a son. They have a son who's here in Santa Cruz. And, and it comes out that they're here looking at the project for their son. The dad pulled me aside and said, he's slipped. He needs a hand. And before anyone said anything else, Janel's saying, he's got to come out. There are such great people. We will help him. This program's helped me so much. We will help him. And so I want to get back to, I'll come back to that slipping and hands. But I want to say what a full circle this is for me personally. When I just graduated school, I was living in Brooklyn, and my wife and I got a book called Grub, and it was co-written by Chef Terry here, Bryant, and and my wife and I had an apartment where you couldn't open, and we were just learning to cook for ourselves, and coming from a school that had a cafeteria, more than anyone could eat. And then here we are in Brooklyn, working nonprofit salaries. My wife's in grad school, and our oven couldn't open all the way. It would hit the fridge, so you could only kind of slide things in certain ways. And here's this book, Grub, that talks about eating at seasonally, and shopping at the farmers markets. We were like, oh, there's something here. Food is really medicine. Food is really life, and that was really impactful for me and really fundamental. And then I remember I was living in Greenpoint, or as my grandpa used to call it, Greenpoint, those Brooklyn accents. And the building was owned by a Polish family. The landlord, Timmy Tank Top, he lived in the basement. After the dinner, I'll tell you plenty of Timmy Tank Top stories. His character. But his mom was in her 80s, and I remember it was a cold, blustery night, and we were writing the check, and I remember I asked Timmy, I was like, yeah, how is Maria, because that's who, he goes, she's living in her car. And it was below freezing. It was 20 degrees. And I found out about 3 weeks, a month later, she had died. She had died living in her car. And I was just the inequality. And so we left Brooklyn. I mean, I couldn't, I was just so, the inequality that we saw in New York and on the streets, and people invisible, I just couldn't deal with that. And so we came where we thought the streets were paved by protest, and we landed in Berkeley. And then we thought, we tried to find somewhere that was better, and then, it was, the inequality's there. The inequality's here. And, where we did find it was at the farmers markets. The farmers markets, there's community there. There's people that care there. And there's people that care here. And you are those people that care here. So thank you for being those folks here, that when people slip, by being here tonight, you're helping us extend an arm to help people from slipping. I want to particularly appreciate all of our volunteers, chefs. Thank you. Thank you so much for being people that will reach out your hand rather than saying, why did you slip? Why didn't you wear better shoes? Many of us were born to have great shoes and at higher ground and have rain gear. And many of us were born with those things and worked very hard to maintain them. And worked very hard to buy our own, rain jackets. And both of those things can be true. That some people are surrounded on the sidewalk where the options, it's really slippery out there, and there's really had no choice but to find a path that's pretty slippery. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being the arms. This program, fundamentally, we don't keep people from slipping. That's not this project's role. This project is about putting out a stepping stone and inviting folks to follow that path. But it's the trainees that do the real walking, and they have to follow that path to keep from slipping. So I want to thank you again for being here, for being that helping hand. Being here, you've supported us. Our goal for this event was to raise $35,000, and we're $15,000 short. So if you're able to make an additional donation, we'd love that. Your servers are here, and they have envelopes that will that you can make a donation. My colleague Bryant is somewhere in the back here. There he is. He's a really tall guy running in the back. He was on the farm tour. He's able to run credit cards. I'm able to run credit cards. Our value added table are able to process donations. Thank you so much for being here and for contributing to helping us keep people from slipping. So thank you so much. This concludes the Sustained Supper. Thank you. It's our first time back in a long time, so thank you for being here.